That going
Okay,
for
I'm
me.
impressed already.
Yeah, there you
But
go.
I'm easily impressed. All right. Dallas Cowboys, Texans,
Dallas Cowboys.
Rangers, Astros,
Rangers, come on.
Spurs, or Mavs.
I like the Mavericks.
Okay. What is a word or a few words that your friends would use to describe you?
Oof. Way too smart for his own good.
Okay.
So I once had, friends when I first moved to Texas. I was just trying to find my way in the world, and I started working as a waiter in a restaurant, and they had been watching me play Jeopardy for a couple of weeks. And
Oh my God, you're a Jeopardy guy.
yeah, so they were watching me play Jeopardy, and they'd all just it became kind of a drinking game for them. They'd just sit and watch me, and then, when I got one wrong, they could drink, but they had to hold off until that happened, so they were dry for long spells. And then one of my friends said, having a brain like yours waiting tables is kind of like using a thermonuclear device to kill just like one guy. There's just like too much power there. So I don't know, it's kind of a flattering thing for them.
How about your parents? What word or words would your parents use to describe you?
I would say that they would describe me as intelligent and surprisingly responsible.
Okay. You have brothers and sisters?
I have an older brother. He's an anesthesiologist.
And you're the youngest?
I am the youngest sibling, yes.
Okay.
That is correct.
Okay. I'm the youngest too.
Are you really? Yeah. All right, younger than you then.
I get you. How about, what's a word that you describe yourself?
Complicated.
Complicated.
I like that, yeah. I would call myself complicated.
Why?
Because I like to consider everything, and I like to think about things in the abstract form, and I like to look at every single problem from as many different angles as it has, and I like to kind of figure out different directions of every situation. So what I'm describing is that I overthink things occasionally. It's a thing that I do, but I think that it's also, it comes from a great place, and that I'm a systems thinker. I like to understand what the inputs are into the system, what the system does to what the inputs are, and what the outputs are, because that, I think, that's the most fascinating thing for me. Like, the thing that I love to do the most is tackling a really complicated, sticky problem with a bunch of data and figuring out how to rearrange it so that things work better. That's a favorite thing.
Now I read a book recently, I can't remember the name because I'm not as smart as you are, but they said that people in general, if they're very decisive, they quote unquote score better as far as, oh, this person's very accomplished, or this person's very competent.
Okay.
Now, the decision making that you talked about, of which you consider a lot of things and you're thoughtful, that sometimes is not as appealing.
Really?
That's what I heard. So how do you, because you talked about when you're on the stage, you talked about a lot of issues and you were like, right on.
Yeah.
So obviously you've had to put thought into it, and you said, this is the way that I believe I'm going to go. This is the way world thinking.
Yeah, this is the way that I make decisions. So what I do is I consider all the various inputs. I consider what will happen when those inputs are released out into the world, and what any possible outcome is to those inputs. And if the system is sufficient to correct the problem that I have without damaging inputs down the line. See, what we've got in the legislature right now, Bill, is a whole lot of people doing a whole lot of short-term thinking.
So you're saying the system's broke.
It's broken. They're not thinking about the impacts of the things that they're doing, and as a result, they're coming up with all sorts of short-term thinking. Now, the reason that this problem occurred is that right now, the vast majority of the people in the Texas legislature are hardcore, on the far right side of the spectrum, Republicans. And when you have a lack of diversity of opinion like that, when you don't have a 50-50 split, you get a bunch of groupthink, which means that everybody's agreeing with each other. And it's been my experience in business that when you put a bunch of people together in a room to decide something that's complicated and sticky and has a lot of different factors to it, and they all agree with each other already walking into the room, the solution they come up with is terrible. Because they can't consider all the eventual outcomes.
So what does one member do? Say you become elected
Right?
in the fall.
Yes.
What can one voice do to change that groupthink? Because groupthink is an issue. Because we've had groupthink from everything from slavery to
Yeah. All sorts of bad decisions.
all sorts of bad things.
Yeah, absolutely.
Where it's acceptable.
Right.
So what do you do?
So what you need to do is to be persuasive. What you need to do is to talk to people and to figure out where their values are coming from. Once you figure out what somebody's value is, what's most important to them. So I have a management style in my day job in the business world where I just ask a whole lot of questions. And actually a lot of my coworkers find this really frustrating because I will not stop asking questions until I get to the point of what's really going on. What is the reason we're not proceeding with this project? Oh, it's not in the budget. Well, it could be in the budget because it would pay for itself. Well, we don't have the personnel to do it. Well, we could hire additional personnel and they would more than pay for themselves if we brought them on. Well, we're just not interested in it right now because we have these other priorities, and really my boss needs this feather in his cap from his project, so his is taking priority. So that's the kind of thing that I do, and it's enabled me to get a lot of things done in the business world that everybody would say these things are impossible. You do it by asking a lot of questions, and when you finally figure out what that person's true motivation is, you use that and position your solution as meeting with that value. So that's all it takes, really.
Understand.